Ever since that awful train derailment in Ohio almost 2 months ago, people who live near the tracks here in western New York have asked questions about rail safety here. Tonight, one of our federal lawmakers is demanding some answers. This comes as Norfolk Southern put out its 6-point plan to address what went wrong with that train that derailed in East Palestine, Ohio. This was back on February 3rd. The company says these changes will immediately enhance the safety of its operations, and you can see it focuses on bearing detectors. A preliminary NTSB report says one of the derailed train bearings was recorded at 253 degrees above the air temperature. That warning came too late to prevent the derailment. The company will now install more of those hot bearing detectors beginning right near East Palestine. Norfolk Southern's rail system, of course, goes right through western New York. So does CSX. So U.S. Senator Chuck Schumer sent this letter to those companies and others that operate in this state, asking about safety plans and coordination. God forbid something like what we saw in Ohio should happen here.
The bottom line is simple. You know, different hazardous materials require different kinds of firefighting equipment and materials. And when our localities don't know what's going through, they can't be prepared to fight the fire. They don't know if it's vinyl chloride or oil or something else, which requires different types of treatment and different types of equipment.
Well, ever since this derailment happened, we've heard from a lot of you. We know you have questions about rail safety. And so joining us live right now is James Lewis. He is the National Vice President of the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trainmen. Sir, we appreciate you coming back in. And I want to start there with Senator Schumer's call for Norfolk Southern and CSX, specifically to alert local authorities what is being transported on these trains so that first responders can be better prepared. I wonder if that's already happening, and if not, do you see that as kind of a realistic goal?
It's really not happening to the extent that I think that Governor Schumer, Senator Schumer would like to see. It would be something that would have to be, brought forward with some legislation.
The senator is also demanding answers in terms of staffing requirements on these trains. We talked a while back about your union's push for at least a 2-person crew on trains. He seemed to indicate today when he was asked about this that if the companies balk at that, he may consider federal legislation. I wonder, how do you think better staffing with the 2-person crew requirement and otherwise, because we know the industry overall has a lot fewer people working in it now than it did a couple of decades ago. How specifically would that help prevent these train derailments? I don't know that they're necessarily happening more right now, but they are so much in the spotlight at this moment.
As we've been explaining over the years when we've been trying to keep this legislation for 2-person crew bills together, it's good to have 2 sets of eyes in a locomotive cab and 2 sets of ears to know what's going on down the road. But even more important, when a situation like what we've seen here in the last month or so go on, it gets 2 sets of hands for whatever we need to do to help the communities. As Senator Schumer mentioned about what's in these cars, the engineer and conductor knows what's in those cars. They have all the paperwork, so they can tell the first responders what are in those cars. So we're kind of like the first responders for the first responders. When they're coming towards the train, we're coming towards them to show them this is what we have in the train, this is what you need to worry about.
Norfolk Southern is specifically addressing, I mentioned, those sensors that are set up along the rails to detect when the bearings get too hot. They have these temperature gauges on them. And again, the NTSB says the one that was on the train that derailed got more than 250 degrees hotter than the air temperature just before that crash. There is a call to put more of these sensors. I guess they're spaced out at certain intervals, and the thought now is that you may need more of them so that they could detect a hot bearing sooner. What is the system like here in our region in terms of those sensors?
There's pretty much only detectors, one out towards Lancaster, one out towards Hamburg, and then you have one out in Niagara County. So in the Buffalo area itself, there is no detectors other than those 3 that we really have.
So how important to put more of those in?
Oh, I think it's definitely having them, especially the tracks that run right through the middle of Buffalo.
Is it just a cost thing? I mean, is that why maybe we aren't seeing more of those sensors, or is what happened in Ohio just sort of a wake-up call to everybody that if something's going to get that hot, you need to know as soon as possible, and if you're waiting 5, 10, 15 miles, maybe you don't learn soon enough?
I think it's a combination of both. One, the cost of it, the maintenance of it, to make sure that the carriers do keep these things in working order, and sometimes the knee-jerk reaction after something like this happens.
Now that we have this preliminary report from the NTSB, with all of your decades of experience, what do you think should be the focus moving forward, bigger picture in terms of what we're learning happened in Ohio, but to make rails safer, here in Western New York as well?
I think one of the biggest concerns we got, besides we talked about the two-person crew, is the length of these trains. Just over the weekend here in Buffalo, I'm getting reports of trains that are almost 3 miles long. We had one that just came through town here. There was over 20,000 tons of train. That's a lot of train to run, and when you have issues, it becomes a bigger problem than when you have trains that just 4 or 5 years ago were half that size.
Finally, there is a bit of breaking news I mentioned to you just before the show started here. The New York Times is reporting that the NTSB is going to open a special investigation into Norfolk Southern. So this wouldn't just focus on, what happened on February 3rd or even the couple of other recent incidences. This is looking over, the past few years to see if there are, any systemic problems with Norfolk Southern. What do you make of the fact that the NTSB is going to open up that special investigation?
They've done that in the past. Many, I would say 20 years ago, they did one over on CSX when they was having issues. So they try to do a little more thorough to find out all the nuances of what is going on here that's causing all these rash of derailments and incidences that we're having.
Jim Lewis is the National Vice President for the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trainmen. Tens of thousands of members across the country, and the Vice President lives right here in Buffalo. Jim, thanks so much for coming in again. Good to see you.
Anytime.